Story 1. I talked to a flat earther about my job working for a company that tracks ship locations, routes, and speeds by satellite. We also had ways of monitoring carbon emissions based on fuel consumption and known weather conditions. None of this would work at all if the Earth was flat. Not a bit of it. I could only explain the most basic concepts, but it was enough for him to understand and realize that I was right and that he had been convinced by someone who had no practical experience of the spherical nature of the Earth. I think that's what really did it. My experience was really tangible. This happens, then we measure this, and so on. No theory, just practice. A bit like showing a child a rock dropping to the ground to explain gravity, rather than giving them the whole theoretical explanation. You know? Sorry, it's a bit rambling. I'm so tired. Story 2. I convinced a flat earther temporarily by asking him if it was possible for a sphere to be so large that you could not tell it was a sphere by simply being on the surface of it. Took him a while. I used an analogy of an extremely long line that was so slightly curved you could not tell by looking at a small section of it. Eventually, he said yes to the sphere, and I told him that was how big the Earth is. A few days later, he reverted. Most of these people aren't mentally stable. They believe in a lot of conspiracies. Corny edit, but as a connoisseur of flat Earth content, my personal favorite is Professor Dave on YouTube. He is an underappreciated dude who just had a science channel on YouTube and got brigaded by flat earthers for an unrelated video. He made like 6 video responses in total just owning these guys, but they eventually gave up. Check it out. Story 3. Look, it's really easy. If the Earth is flat, there would be an edge. And there would be a Disney park at the edge, and we could bungee jump off the side and paraglide into the void. Someone would be making an absolute ton of money off of it if it existed. Guess what? Nobody is doing that, and in this world where absolutely everything is exploited for profit, if no one is making money off of it, it does not exist. No edge. Not flat. Get a clue. Story 4. I was debating a flat earther in Mexico and asked him about how global positioning system worked if there were no satellites. He said that they had devices in the ground to route you. I told him the Mexican government is barely able to put decent water pipes in the ground. Would he really think they had the technology to put routing devices in the ground? He chuckled with a 1,000-mile gaze. Story 5. A serious answer here. The thing that made me stop was just the question, why would NASA lie to you? I will try replying to all of you all, but I will go to a study hall, so I'll reply later. Story 6. The inclined seat conformed perfectly to his body, strategically placed in the cockpit, so he could reach no buttons with outstretched arms. The straps anchored him firmly in place. They were uncomfortable but necessary. The engine burst to life with a roar that drowned out all other sounds. The vibrations tore through his body, and he felt himself sink back into the seat as the gravitational force began to take hold. The captain was watching the readouts on the light-emitting diode displays and monitoring their trajectory as the acceleration began to peel his thoughts away. There was no more room in his mind. It was filled with pure fear. The boosters grew with greater ferocity as they lifted higher into the sky, the sun beaming down on the left side of the shuttle. But faster they went, through maximum dynamic pressure and higher into the stratosphere until the engines grew quieter, the air more silent, and the vibrations became less violent. They were approaching space, the final frontier. An hour later, with the path of the shuttle a success, he noticed as his raw emotions withdrew that his body felt funny. His hair drifted aimlessly across his eyes as the captain's pen hovered in midair, and he knew the impossible was true. His childhood dream, he was in space. Weightless. The captain turned to him and motioned for him to unhook his seatbelt. He did as he was commanded. They both left their chairs and glided over to the tiny glass windows to overlook the magnificence of Earth. "What do you think now?" said the captain. He recoiled in horror. It couldn't be. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration had replaced the windows with high-definition screens in order to perpetrate their lies that the world was spherical. Those bastards. Story 7. I spent about a year infiltrating the flat Earth community on Instagram. I garnered a decent following with an account dedicated to flat Earth travel photos. An intentionally absurd premise. In that time, I learned quite a bit about the community, including how to discern the trolls from the real deal. The majority of legitimate flat earthers are extremely distrustful of anything the government says or does. These same people are September 11th truthers, Holocaust deniers, and anti-vaccine advocates, and they connect these conspiracies together. Many of them have also attached flat earth theory to religion, magic, or mysticism. Before my infiltration, I had always considered conspiracies fun, like they were the fan fiction of real life. Now they mostly make me sad. For all the phony accounts like mine, there are still plenty of people out there willing to drop a couple of $100 on a flat earth convention. Story 8. Not a flat earther. But I was a 9/11 truther. I guess you could say, insofar as I thought it was an inside job. I was heavily influenced and believed in multiple conspiracies in the Zeitgeist film as well. There was a never-ending source of dark, shadowy, they, and them controlling everything behind the scenes. I think there were a few factors that helped me escape that. Losing my father. It was such a life-changing event at that age that it made me reconsider everything in my life. Some light training in evaluating information. I learned about how to vet sources, whether something was actually news or just an opinion or editorial. Ironically, this education came before I was duped. After my dad died, suddenly this started to kick in more. Lack of time and means to dig myself a deeper hole. I started college shortly after my father passed, and that plus a full-time job took up all my time. I had none to buy further into the newest crazy ideas. I had no Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or anything similar. No smartphone or texting. My primary use of Reddit once I discovered it was for Naruto, Bleach, Rage comics, and advice animals. So all in all, I think the time away gave me time to detox. If I had been on social media as I discovered those things, I can only imagine I very well may have become a QAnon believer as well. Looking back, I see how gullible I was in that moment, fooled by the onslaught of half-truths and clever logic of the various theories. I know better now, and I should have known better then, but I've been humbled to the fact that everyone is vulnerable to this sort of stuff. To think otherwise is deluding yourself. Story 9. Obviously, there's a lot of joking around here, but if the question was meant seriously, we should understand what exactly flat earth belief is. As Dan from the channel Folding Ideas puts it in his excellent video, In Search of a Flat Earth. Nominally, flat earth is a belief that the earth isn't a globe but is actually flat, a fact that has been kept from us, meaning normal people, by a nebulous, powerful group of people for nefarious, inscrutable purposes. I think it's worth considering that the shape of the earth might actually be the least important belief of flat earth. Flat earth is a syncretic, biblical belief that is both evangelical and apocalyptic. The world is flat, and they are hiding that fact from you because a flat earth would be irrefutable proof that we live in a divine fishbowl and, thus, that God is real. Flat earthers are not otherwise empty vessels who believe one odd thing. They believe that thing because it suits their purposes. Flat earthers have an agenda. Their anxiety is that the world has become too complex, that too many things are changing, and that science and progressivism are actively malicious elements working to obstruct the true nature of God. Most people don't actually believe flat earth because they were persuaded by shoddy evidence. They do so because it says something they already believe about the nature of the social world. Story 10. Not me, but I got a flat earther to question his beliefs and hopefully critically analyze them by giving him the proof he asked for, to which he responded that mainstream science and media are lies. I asked why he asked for proof if he could just disregard it as lies either way, then told him that since he required no proof or evidence against to believe something, it made him the easiest person to deceive and that it seemed pretty sheep-like to me. He deleted all of his flat earth comments and hasn't posted about it since. Estimated time of arrival. Holy round earth. Batman. Thank you for the karma and awards in gold. I promise I'll screenshot next time. Estimated time of arrival too. He didn't block me. I can still see everything he posts or posted. And the original poster thread creator also said the comment disappeared. Shame, shame, shame. Story 11. Did any of you former flat earthers believe because you wanted to be unique and different from everyone else? I suspect that some people who deny things like this are the same people who just want to be different. They'll say they disliked a movie because the majority likes it. They'll say they don't enjoy a type of food because most do. Basically, they don't really care how they truly feel about something. They just want to be different and say the opposite of the majority. Maybe not with everything, but they'll choose a few things in life because they want to feel special. Story 12. My father-in-law is a flat earther and an all-around nutcase. I asked him if the earth was flat and you were right, what then? How is your life any different? His face was priceless because he didn't have an answer. It was great. Story 13. It took about 5 years. It was a lot of willful ignorance on my part. I just refused to question the logic of it. In fact, I spent most of my time coming up with crazy fantasies about a lot of things I didn't understand. But you have to understand that there is just so much we don't know about that sometimes our priority on what is real and what can be believed can get confused. I was learning so much so fast that I really didn't question something so inane as the world being flat. Of course, it was, why wouldn't it be? The day that changed it forever, though, was when I asked my father what happens when you get to the edge of the world. He, of course, said the world is round like a ball. Being about 5 years old, I thought that made a lot of sense. Story 14. Okay, I get that the question is funny and all, but I actually did believe for a time that the earth was flat. I was raised in a very religious family and basically came to the conclusion that the Bible declared the earth was flat. Since I believe the earth was created in 7 days, the idea that God set the stars in the sky in one day made much more sense if the stars were simply points of light in a sort of snow globe formation extrapolated onto a bigger scale. Otherwise, he took one day out of the 7 to make a septillion or so balls of flaming gas, all with their own planets, and set each one into galaxies before breaking for lunch. It just didn't make sense to me that he would spend 5 days on one planet and make the creation of the trillions of other things in the universe a little footnote. I was confronted about this belief a couple of times, only one of which wasn't laughed off. That single person who engaged started a serious discussion, presenting much more evidence for the globe Earth, and eventually told me to watch Carl Sagan. The Cosmos series was on YouTube, and once I watched it, I had to know more. Finally, a video from the channel Minute Physics convinced me in no uncertain terms that the Earth was round. All it took was one quote, which I still remember leaving chills down my spine. You should have put a serious tag on this question. Story 15. I fell into a rabbit hole of conspiracies. Thankfully, physics is a mandatory subject in Switzerland, which made much more sense than any top 10 facts that prove that the Earth is flat. Story 16. I'm upvoting just for the pun. I don't care what people think about the shape of the Earth, as long as we all agree that we kind of need to do something about it so that we don't perish. Story 17. Man, I figured there would only be a couple of legitimate ones, but I was really interested. Instead, it's the same tired jokes you've been recycling for the past few years. Don't you guys get tired of upvoting comments like, there are flat earthers all over the globe? Story 18. I'm not a flat earther, but I want to ask them, why would the National Aeronautics and Space Administration and the government lie to you? Why would they spend extra energy, time, and money faking things like the moon landing and outer space pictures of Earth? Story 19. I once had a conversation with a professional Ultimate Fighting Championship fighter and outspoken flat earther. I tried to explain how Archimedes was able to prove the Earth was round just by using his shadow. I mentioned air travel and how Hawaii and Japan are not 20+ hours of flying apart. But what I think got through to him the most was seasons. This particular guy was Brazilian. I explained that because the Earth is round, it's possible to be winter in Brazil and summer in the United States and vice versa. He nodded and stared off into the distance silently, and the conversation was over. I don't think I converted him, but it gave him significant pause at the very least. Story 20. Sunsets. Man, sunsets. I watched all these videos, read a book on it, talked to people about it. I was one of them. Everyone else was crazy for not seeing the truth. I still have a lot of questions about how the heck this thing could possibly be a globe, but that's beside the point. I had an answer for everything. People would ask, why don't we fall off the edge? There is no edge. The Earth's an infinite space. Why do balloons pop when they go high enough? Because there's only so much air and it sinks to the Earth's surface, but eventually you can fly above it, and then there's no pressure of the air pushing against the balloon, so it pops. How does gravity work? Gravity is made up. I believe in buoyancy. But one day somebody asked me, If the sun is a spotlight in the sky, then how does a sunset work? I was like, and I looked into it, couldn't find anything that made sense. Sunsets turn me back. Story 21. Tangentially related, but my friends and I invented the Australia isn't real part of the flat earth conspiracy. We're all from New Zealand, so convincing a large number of people our arrival isn't real was pretty cool.